Hi everyone, this is Ali Hussein Kasim from Alitalkstech. Today I have a super interesting guest, my good friend Munyi. Munyi Nthiga is one of the OGs of FinTech in this region. And when I say region, I mean Africa. Munyi also is a colleague at the Association of FinTechs in Kenya, where he serves as a board member and our Secretary General. Munyi. Boss, karibu sana.
Asante ndugu man.
Do you know how long I wanted to have this conversation? I've been wondering, man. Been wondering what's going on, man. We are getting to the third year of Alitalkstech, as a platform. And I'm saying, no, I need to go back to the OGs and started talking to them. So, Munyi, we are all about telling our story as far as the African continent is concerned. And yours, for me, is one of the interesting ones. And these untold stories, people, insiders in the ecosystem may know and may appreciate, but the general public probably doesn't know some of the struggles and the issues that the fintech ecosystem and how it is completely meshed together with financial services. Because again, as I was saying, by the way, we are doing this conversation today on the sidelines of the Africa FinTech Live event at the Sarit Center in Nairobi, Kenya. So I was saying earlier in the morning today, most of us forget the fin in the FinTech. So, what's your story, bro?
Who interesting? Munyi. So first of all, I think I need to talk about the things that matter most to me first. Sorry. I am a dad. Yes. Two amazing kids. My daughter is 10 years old.
Wow.
My son is 8. These are my bosses. Even before I get to work, these are the people I report to first. Because I take the cue from them. Everything that we do on a daily basis, we're essentially building. We always told that we borrowed their future. Now, the present is about borrowing their future. So we need to make sure that we create an environment when they get there, they're able to find their feet and do whatever it is that they want to aspire to be. So for me, that's the first thing that's most important to me. The other thing is, I know that as a human being, I have a purpose. And therefore for me, that, everything that we do, everything that we build, every engagement that I have, I know that I need to create change and positive change, and therefore try as much as possible to interact with as many people. So I define myself as an extreme extrovert, not only an extreme extrovert, because I go out of my way to find people who are extreme extrovert. Is to go out of your way to find people. Like today when I walked into this forum, couple of guys I hadn't met, but every new engagement, I want to know what you do. How is it that we can work together? How can I help? Most importantly. So secondly, I'm an extreme extrovert. And then finally, I'm your regular guy. At the end of the day, when the work is done and we all become, normal human beings with neighbors, with family, with friends. And therefore, I'm just your average guy
Right.
at the end of the day.
Munyi, thank you so much for that introduction. Now, take us through your life in the tech ecosystem in Kenya and in Africa. How did you get to where you are today? And what are those things that really sort of resonated with you and pushed you forward to who you are today?
It's an interesting story because back in uni, all of us growing up, we kept being asking, what do you want to do? And I'll explain why that is a wrong question to ask anyone who's young and growing up. We kept being asking, what do you want to do? And I remember my dad really pushing me to do accounts. Because those days, you're either an accountant or a doctor or an engineer. And all in high school, we used to be told these to be called prestigious courses, right? Because the prominent people in society then were either of those, right? But then I went to the University of Nairobi and I studied economics. And I thank God that I did. Because I really wanted to study law for whatever reason. But now when I look back, I thank God that I did economics, because for the simple reason that economics allowed you to look at the whole society. How do people produce? How do people earn? How is revenue shared from a national to a micro level? So by appreciating these things, it was really foundational for me. And I'll explain why it really came to mean a lot to me in the tech industry. Because very quickly after uni, those days things were, I would say, good. Yeah. I mean, there was a liberalization of a lot of corporations. The corporate sector was really bulging. It was during the Kibaki time. So when I just left university, jobs were available, let's be honest. And so I found myself working for a courier company.
Courier
company.
That I did not know.
Many people don't know this. I did not. So I got a job for a courier company, and the only qualification they needed from me was a driver's license. So I went for an interview and carried all my certificates and all these things I had done. You know, the way you finish campus, you've done all your computer packages and whatever it is, you laminated everything, degree, everything. And then I had a suit, which was oversized because I'd borrowed from a guy who's taller than me. Yes. So I walked into this office and said, these are my papers. You're like, just put your papers aside. Can you drive? I was like, yeah. So we have a job for you. And we've just signed a contract with Cooperative Bank. Then the courier company used to be housed at Bruce House. And they said, we have a contract with Cooperative Bank. And your work will be to come, take the pickup at 6 a.m., pick the mailbag from Cooperative Bank on Kainange Street and deliver it here at HQ so that it can be distributed after 8 a.m. And that was the job.
What?
And I took it.
So you are a driver?
Yes. And I took it.
Immediately after college?
Immediately after university. And I took it. And I think this is one of the lessons that many people need to learn, because for me, why did I take the job? Not because I wanted to be the driver, but I just wanted to get into
the job market.
The job. That's why I took it.
So that's how you broke into the job market?
In the job market, incidentally. By the time I reported the following Monday, the late Miriam, and may her soul rest in peace, who gave me the first opportunity, told me that Coop Bank have cancelled the contract.
What?
I was like, wow. But she said, you know what? I'll find some use for you. And she sent me to the customer service team. And if you understand how Courier works, there's something called an air bill number that is labeled on a package. You have to track that package all the way. So we had a lot of traffic into the US. So they had all this bunch of air bill numbers that you had to key in the air bill number on the system and track and see how the package has been delivered. So this bunch, the folks that are there used to take the whole day to do the tracking. So day one, I was given the bunch and in 2 hours I was done. Then they said, no, it can't happen. It's not repeatable. It's like, no problem. Did it again in 1.5 hours.
You had made mistakes.
I had made mistakes. I mean, you're straight out of campus. We've been here for 15 years. This thing takes a whole day. I take 1.5 hours. They're like, we need to counter check. So somebody else.
So from 2 hours to 1.5 hours.
Exactly. So somebody else had to be given the same bunch to check, and they realized this thing actually really works. And I came to realize that.
So what was the magic?
The magic was everybody wanted to fill every field when you're doing the search. But I realized, I asked myself, what are the most important fields for you to get the outcome that you want? Because I asked, what do you want? What is it true? And what outcome do you want? So by understanding, so I first started understanding the tool that I've been given, which was a thing in MS-DOS. Anybody who knows, remembers that black screen. And when I understood what I need to input and what feedback I want, then I realized I don't need to fill everything.
You know, talking about MS-DOS, I remember my first ever access to a computer in college at Kenyatta University. And the lecturer told me, do you know what MS-DOS stands for?
Mm-hmm.
I said, no. I said, okay, so MS, we know it's Microsoft. It's short for Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
DOS stands for dirty old system.
Absolutely, but it worked. It worked, yeah. So I do that job for 6 months, and then there's an opening in the sales department, and they say we want to hire internally first before we can sell the market.
Yeah. Just step back one bit. Yes. After they confirmed that you were actually accurate,
yes,
what did they ask you? What did they do?
So I mean, they had to just allow me to do the job, but word went around very quickly that there's this brilliant young guy who's got into the business who's just doing things chap. So long story short, the word fell onto the sales manager's desk, and she was told there's a brilliant guy who's just been hired. Would you have a conversation? I said, yes, absolutely. There's an opening in the sales department. Would you be interested? I was like, yes, finally I can wear a suit. Because my old job, I was wearing, the FedEx uniform. So every time I used to go hang out after work, my folks from the university used to call me a security guy. Yeah. So anyway, moved into sales at FedEx. And within the first 1 year, I was the best sales guy in the team. Again, what did I do? I just asked myself, which are the regions that you guys are looking at? What kind of companies? So I went back then. There used to be the directory. If you remember that big book, Yellow Pages. And what I did is I used to get very early in the office, go into the Yellow Pages and get the phone numbers, and I used to make cold calls to all. So I'll make cold calls to like 50 companies, and out of them I would get 10. So by the time I'm going to visit them, I'm 100% sure.
Data in its most archaic form, bro. Exactly, archaic form. That was now Google search. Scanning Yellow Pages, getting the numbers, making cold calls. Do you guys ship out stuff and whatever? So out of 50, I would get 10. By the time I'm landing there, I know that they need the service. And then what I did very quickly is, and it's a trick that works to date. The first person that you meet at the reception is the most important guy.
100%. So what I used to do is I used to get there, say hi, and ask them how they're doing. You can be amazed at how such a simple question just changes everything. Just by asking them how you're doing, and then now I tell them what brings me here.
Even today, when I drive into a place, the security there just treats them nicely.
Absolutely.
Really, there is no parking. Where you're going, they'll find parking for you.
Absolutely.
So for me, the trick is simple. Boss, habari gani? Najua wewe ndio mzee wa nyumba.
Bas.
It just breaks everything. Yeah, you.
Absolutely. So in the first 1 year, I was the best sales guy, and my photo was plastered all the way on the hallways and everything. But most importantly is I remember those days we used to chat with the Yahoo and AOL, and they used to get fascinated. What is really the technology support behind this? So I was really excited about technology. By then, of course, folks like Safaricom and Airtel were just coming up. We were playing around with mobile phones, creating ringtones and all those things, funny things and whatever, SMS and joking, all these things. And then, so hung out with my friends, I started listening to these tech companies that were coming up. And I could see the products that they were releasing in the market. And I was like, this looks interesting. So I say to them, hey guys, if there's ever an opportunity in where you work, then just let me know. And so back in 2006, then I just got a phone call. It was like, so Access Kenya is hiring. And they're hiring
one of the earliest ISPs.
One of the earliest ISPs in Kenya. Corporate ISPs. Let me qualify corporate. There was Africa Online then. There was, I remember the name down on Mombasa Road. KDN then wasn't really as big. So I joined Access Kenya in 2006. And then there was a department called Client Relationship Management. And it was a very interesting setup there because it was a department set up specifically just to look after the customer, nothing else. Just to look, when you wake up in the morning, you've got a file of 100 corporate customers and you just call in to ask them how they're doing. Again, how are you doing?
Wow.
You can imagine. And I remember,
I don't think it's happening anymore.
It's not happening anymore. And
that's where we are losing
the touch, and technology is good, but it can never replace human relationships. Absolutely. So really, I really enjoyed because those are the foundations for me for really understanding the human side of business. And it has really helped me to date because in Africa, you do business through relationships. It doesn't matter how good your product is. The guy doesn't like you. Does that? It's just the way things are. So joined Access Kenya in 2006. Joined this amazing department called Client Relationship Management. In year one, by the end of the year, I was the best employee in the business. Year two, got promoted to the next level. Year three, again, got promoted to the next level. So in short, within 3 years, I was already a team leader in that business. And when you get to that spot, then you start asking yourself, then what? And by then, over the 3 years, I'd really gotten really interested in technology. And because the customer relationship management team and the support team, which was the largest team, were on the same floor. And that was by design. Why? Because the support team is supporting the customer, they are techies. We are forming a relationship with the customer. So we understand, so that the techie understands why is it that the customer is saying what they're saying. It's just not about rebooting a router. It's about what's the challenge. So what we used to do is we used to relay the feedback from the customer to the support team. So by the time they're interacting with the customer, they know where they're coming from. So it was by design. And therefore, then I started getting interested in tech, the knowledge bit itself. So I started, reading, researching, and all those things. And by year 2, there's nothing that the tech guys were doing or telling the customer I didn't understand. So most of the times I used to go to the customer, look at the problem, go in, I could log into a router myself and have a look and then come and tell the techie, this is the problem. Please fix it. It reduces a lot of time and resources for the business.
You turn around
time in fixing, yeah. And therefore then so 3 years later I started asking myself, so what next? Those days it was about VPNs, and MPLSs, WANs and all those things. And those things are good. But a WAN is a WAN, MPLS is MPLS. VPN, once you set it up, that's it. It doesn't, it's infrastructure, underlying infrastructure. But I used to ask myself, so with this underlying infrastructure, what are people doing?
What are you building on top of?
Absolutely. So that's when now I started getting interested in software businesses. But I was very sure that, and nothing against software businesses, but I was very sure that I don't want to work for a software business to sell software. Because again, once you buy, because those days, software used to come in a disk, CD, yeah? That you run on your computer and then you download. It was a floppy disk, absolutely. Then I used to ask myself, so once you sell this software, then what? What are they using that software to produce? You just follow. Yeah, what are they using? And all of this.
So you are following the money.
I'm just following the money. And again, ask yourself this: all these guys who are producing this software are not seated in Kenya, but are there software engineers in Kenya? Yes. So what are they doing? So just asking myself and then doing research in the industry, and I stumbled upon this business that was our customer. Incidentally, first of all, I knew them because they were always in our reports for late payment.
As your tech startup, your startup leverage every time.
And this is the thing. In the customer relationship team, your work was to make sure that that customer is not disconnected.
Yes.
In the accounts,
but they also paying.
In the accounts team, their work, they're trained to disconnect on due date. So we found ourselves fighting for this business every month. Don't disconnect these guys. We know them. I've spoken to the owner. He'll pay. The accounts guys are like, no, even last month. So anyway, long story short, that's how I stumbled into this business, because we went there visiting them very many times. But I used to look at them and I just see all these guys in headphones and writing code and whatever it is. And I was like, this guy is like, he must be doing some cocky to up, but they must be doing some interesting stuff. And so when I engaged them, and I was like, oh, interesting. These guys are actually up onto something. And then I told them, you know what, I'd love to join you guys. They're like, are you sure? Yeah, because I used to wear a suit, tie, and everything. It was a serious guy. And these guys are in jeans and t-shirts. So I was like, I'd like to join you guys. So they looked at me with my suit. They're like, you can't hack it here. I was like, please try me. They're like, okay. Next time we have a vacancy, we'll call you. And they did. And I showed up with my suit. And these guys were in this warehouse that never had AC. Yeah, so it was pretty hot. So when you show up in a suit and a tie, you're basically roasting. Unachomeka. But of course, you have to act like nothing is happening, but you're boiling inside. So long story short, that's how I joined Cellulant.
Wow, that was Cellulant.
That company was Cellulant. So I joined them. And I joined them in that warehouse. And I ditched my suit and tie. And I had to go shopping for jeans and... interesting.
So for my listeners and my audience, for those of you who may not know Cellulant, Cellulant is the OG of fintechs in Africa. One, in my humble opinion, one of the most successful and underrated or valued fintech in this part of the world. The only fintech that I know of that operates, apart from maybe a couple of others, but actually operates in 18 African markets with a license from a central bank perspective, and another 18 with partnerships with licensed entities like banks. So operationally in 36 African markets, very few banks scratch that. Only one bank can say they operate in that number of countries across Africa, and that's EcoBank. Back to you, boss.
Absolutely. So I get into Cellulant, and I think I got in at the best time. They had just gone through their Series A. I think they had raised $1.5 billion. That was important because at least now they could pay their internet bills, cover and pay salaries. And pay salaries on time. But that's on a side note. I think I joined at the right time because that's a time when Ken Njoroge and the team were thinking about Africa growth. Because in Kenya, they're already serving the major banks. Talk about Barclays, talk about NIC then, talk about Standard Bank, which is Stanbic now.
What were they helping these banks to do?
So interestingly, back in 2008, I hadn't joined them, but this is a story given by Ken, and him and one of his co-founders, CTO Faisal, just approached Standard Chartered Bank, and they had figured out a way of creating a mobile channel on USSD.
Interesting.
So they had figured out that they could use 2008.
Wow.
So they had figured out how they could create a USSD session that could run an application. Yeah. Before then, there was SMS banking. I don't know how many people remember SMS banking. Send balance to this, and then you get a balance, it's a string. Set a balance on your SMS, and then more questions. So they're now figured out from SMS banking into USSD banking. And they went in, met this, and again, relationships. Did this demo, and then there was a gentleman there who was the regional head of digital banking. Looked at this, said, this thing makes sense.
At Barclays then?
No, at Standard Chartered here in Kenya. And he told them, you know what? I only have authority to sign expenditure up until X amount. If you quote anything $1 above this, it has to go all the way to group. So can you build this thing for me with this budget? Of course, I said yes.
That's relationships.
It's relationships. He believed, he looked at them and said, I believe what you guys. However, I'm only limited to this. So can we do this? And that's how they launched in 2009 USSD mobile banking. And that's how that took us to 5 markets. Standard Chartered. Same thing.
With one deal, you would forwarded yourself into five
markets. Yes. Same thing happened with ABSA, which is Barclays then. Pitched in Kenya, believed about the solution, took us to multiple markets in Kenya. In Africa, sorry.
Ask you, what was the business model then? So where's Cellulant making?
So then it was very simple. Not really simple, but when you think about it now, it was really simple. It was about, I'd say, building this, what you call a black box. We used to call it wallet, which is essentially a mobile banking platform that integrates into the core banking and then has channels like USSD and then later mobile apps. Yeah. So you deploy this box into the banking environment, integrate into the core banking, and then now register customers on that channel who then now start accessing their bank accounts using mobile. And before, we just started by purely just balance inquiries.
So this is where the term alternative channels.
That is where alternative channels came in, because for banks, the main channels are branches. So they used to have a department that does alternative channels, and that was us, because all the major banks in Kenya, I believe then, apart from Equity, were actually running on Cellulant technology. And when I joined,
all the major banks,
actually the top 12 banks in Kenya, apart from Equity Bank.
Wow.
Yeah, because Equity Bank somehow they had an in-house. They started this stuff early. They had an in-house team that was building this. So I joined at a point where we had kind of conquered the Kenyan market, right? And like I said, the growth was organic. So you have Standard that is in multiple countries. You have Stanbic that is in multiple countries. You have Barclays that is in multiple countries. You have NCBA that was trying to grow into East Africa and all that. So naturally, they wanted to grow with their technology partner, that was Cellulant. So I remember one day after lunch, then Ken called us into a town hall meeting. And I remember it was October of 2011. And he said, hey guys, we are expanding into Africa. And I want volunteers to go out there to become Cellulant soldiers on the ground.
Wow.
And I found myself, I was like, you know what?
I'm
here. We've built everything here. And we talked about it as evangelizing. Can we go out there? And I was like, I'm in. And the reason why I chose to go was I visited Uganda once for the first time in my life, August of 2011. I was going to implement mobile banking for Stanbic, Uganda. And I landed into that market and I just saw opportunity. So folks said, oh, there's no mobile banking here. The regulator does not allow USSD integration and whatever it is. And all those things. But for me, I just saw opportunity. Yeah. And I was like, we need to be here. So when I went back, I told Ken, you know what? Uganda is an interesting market. And interesting, don't know if I'm allowed to say this on the show, you can edit it later, but we were in the urinal.
No, it's okay.
Let's
Pick it as it is.
and that is the only time you would have, because once you go back to your desk, you'll be all so busy. So I bumped into the Ken in the urinal and I was like, boss. The good thing is Ken allowed very open conversation. So we used to relate like boys. And this is one of the things I really love about leadership. And I told him, hey boss, Uganda, there's a huge market there. And then Ken was like, why don't you go? Then he finished and he left. And that was it. And I thought he was kidding until on Sunday afternoon, that was a Thursday. On Sunday afternoon, I was called by the admin and I was told your ticket to Uganda is ready.
What?
That was Ken for you. So your ticket to Uganda was ready.
So you can use to roll.
It's like your ticket to Uganda was ready.
Forward.
So fast forward. So I go to Uganda. I build the business from scratch, Cellulant Uganda. From 2013, I relocated in 2013. So 2012, I used to go on and off. 2013, I relocated, did 2 years. And then 2014, I just get a call from Ken. And he tells me, you know what? We're now going into Series B funding. And now we really want to, grow across the continent. And so I really need my best soldiers back home. So please get on the next flight back to Kenya. I was like, but Uganda. I was like, get on the next flight back to Kenya. Uganda will take care of itself. If you haven't built a team over the last 2 years, then that needs.
I have worked with Ken during my time at 3 Mice, so I can relate.
Absolutely. So in the next few days, I was back in Nairobi. And then we went into these 3 days of strategy and planning and all these things, just getting ready for investors and all this. So then I told him, now, you know what, I need now a role that can support the growth that you're looking for. So I ended up being now the group business development manager, essentially. The 18, 16 countries that you're talking about, I was the one leading that. So essentially it was, how do we grow from 4 to 8, from 8 to 14, from 14. So the next 3 years, I ended up traveling all over Africa.
Wow.
I think there's no part of sub-Saharan Africa that I haven't gone to. And this for me is what was really powerful. So number one is just understanding the disparity in technology and infrastructure levels in the continent. So you come from a country where many years ago you figured out USSD, now you're doing apps, there's mobile money, M-Pesa, everybody's able to move money from Bangi to M-Pesa, all those things. We're now thinking about more merchant payments and all those things. Then you go into a country where USSD still is a myth.
Or there's even nothing.
Yeah. Places like Malawi, Namibia, name it. I've been all over the place. Zimbabwe, Botswana, Rwanda, Uganda, all over the place. And in all these countries, I always used to interact with the regulator just to understand their thinking, because you just don't get into a market and start operating. You just want to understand their thinking. Number two, the major MNOs, which are majorly MTN and Airtel. And then number three, the biggest banks, because now those have become your anchor clients. So I ended up.
So that's the core difference between business development and sales.
Yes.
Because you're developing the business.
I was developing the business and forming relationships. To date, as we speak, people still call me and say, we know you left Cellulant, but how do we navigate this? Because that is fantastic. And you're getting it from across the continent, yeah? So for the next 3 years, that's what I did. I helped the business grow the continent. And back then, we had a strategy about that we used to call single API for Africa. And essentially, the dream then was, anybody who's coming into Africa and looking at payments, can they have a single API that can integrate to, that gives them access to all mobile wallets and all bank accounts in Africa? That dream still hasn't been achieved, but I think it hasn't been achieved. We're heading there. Because we were asking ourselves, how do you get paid in Africa? Yeah, but actually, how do you get paid in Africa? So that was a dream then. The reason why I had to speak to the regulator, MNO, the biggest bank. The regulator regulates you. The MNO gives you access to the wallet. The biggest bank gives you settlement.
So the whole ecosystem.
Absolutely.
But I mean, look, the story of Cellulant and Ken and yourselves and the team at large continues to be an amazing story. And I still believe there are many nuances of that story that a lot to be told. What are you up to now?
So, about forward, came back, ended up heading Cellulant, Kenya, which is essentially 50% of the business for 2 years. And then in 2019, I took a break. So 10 years of, that's really super intense. Super, super intense. Very enriching. A lot of learnings and all that. So I was getting burnt out. So nothing about the business itself, Cellulant, but I was just burnt out. So I took a break. And then 6 months later, I came back into the industry, and I said, with all this knowledge, let me try and build something for myself, because I figured out there's a gap in the market. We were not looking at, things like ecosystems, how we're able to stitch things together. Everybody is either a payments business or a lending business. If you look at banking, they're talking about retail banking, consumer banking, corporate banking, all these silos and everything. So it was like, how can we just break all these things and just create an ecosystem where everybody's speaking to each other? And so I formed a business called Co-Design, and we built this amazing payment gateway that essentially could basically connect everybody from retail customers to SMEs to corporates, and essentially just allow the flow of money in there. So that went well for a year. And then, of course, COVID came in. And all the business development that I'd done based on my network across Africa then just put everything on a pause. And like anybody else, who was bootstrapping, using my savings over the last many years doing this, then that dried out. So I said, like any responsible person, you need to reset. So went back to the job market, became the MD of Tala, which is the largest digital lender in Kenya outside, of course, M-Shwari and KCB M-Pesa. And I did that for a year and a half. And essentially, Atala was essentially just responsible for, transforming the business from, a digital lender. We were able to get some of the first guys to get licensed by Central Bank, which is quite a huge achievement. And this just shows you the confidence that the market had in the business. And essentially what we were trying to do is just transform that into a fully tech business, and started building like embedded finance and things like that. So 1.5 years later, then of course, the entrepreneurial bug hit. And for me, I asked myself, what it is that I really want to do, because you just don't build platform for the sake of it. And payments, sorry to say, but everybody today is a payments business. There's only so much payments we can do. The question is, I always ask myself, and it goes back to the conversation when I was telling you, when people are being asked, when you grow up, what do you want to be? Yeah. So I asked myself, what problem do I want to solve? So that has led me to stop asking young guys, what do you want to be?
Correct.
I start asking them, what problem do you want to solve? When you follow that, it tells you now what you need to do, as opposed to ask somebody what do you want to do. So I asked myself, what problem do I want to solve? And many years back at Cellulant, we had built a very interesting platform in agriculture in Nigeria that really helped transform how.
Remember that's the best.
So for me, and when the way we were doing payments at Cellulant, it was not about creating a platform for payment. It was about what we used to call sector solutioning. So you look at a sector and ask yourself, what are the challenges in retail? What are the challenges in health? What are the challenges in agric? Then by solving those challenges, ultimately you power the payments. Because today people build rails to power payments. But for who? For why? Where is the value coming from? Where does it end up? You need to understand that. So quickly that led me back to agric for a couple of reasons. Number one, largest contributor to a GDP, not only in Kenya, but sub-Saharan Africa.
Correct.
Look at the number of people it employs. Absolutely. And then when you look at Kenya National Bureau's data, the level of digitization in agriculture is at 4%. What's 4% according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics? So as much as we praise how good we are on mobile money, there are certain sectors that have really not been penetrated in terms of how they move value. And then secondly, the value chain is so fragmented. And I just visited one village in Nandi, just one small village with 7 cooperatives.
Unaenda kwa ground kabisa.
I went to the ground. Again, I was tired of this Nairobi urban vibe. We are all wearing nice. Those days I used to wear bow ties, you remember? I used to wear very sharp bow ties. Actually, I used to buy them from London. Life was good. And I was like, man, we're really talking to ourselves. Where is all this value? Where is it passing through? Who's managing this value? And so by visiting just on the ground, one village, I realized this guy's actually transacting $1 million worth of milk physically. Yeah. Oh. And it's so rudimentary and all this. And I was like, if we only brought, and then these guys, don't have any access to lending. And when they get it, it's too expensive. Yeah. It's not helping them grow their business. It's for sustenance, to pay school fees and all that. They're not getting money to grow. So I said, we need to solve this problem. So long story short, ended up in Agritech. And what we had done up again, us back to startup again, square one, back to square one. And I said, you know what? I just realized all that. It's a mixture of feelings because it's come to at a very high cost at a personal level. You can imagine that high flyer fintech guy and whatever it is, you have to put all that down and start from scratch.
We've been there.
Yeah, start from scratch.
Yeah, been there.
And start going back to the same doors that you're knocking 10 years ago and saying, hey guys, I'm trying to build this thing here. Please have a look at it. Some guys will be like, no. Some guys be like, yeah, let's listen. And then they drag you along for 6 months. And those 6 months you're still incurring bills. So it's come at a very huge personal cost. And but for me, when I think about it, that every time I implement that platform on a cooperative and farmers say, thank you, because now we can get paid on time. I can have access to advance from a bank and whatever it is. That gives me the satisfaction.
So what's the name of your startup?
It's called Ketha, Ketha. From where I come from, which is Mount Kenya East, I need to insist.
So you're not a Morima guy.
No. Mount Kenya East.
Mount Kenya East.
Specifically a place called Mbere. I'm not sure guys know a tribe called Mbere. I'm not sure.
I do.
Yeah. So
very few
Kenyans know about. So I'm from Mbere. And so from there, Ketha means harvest. It's as simple as that. Ketha means harvest. So Ketha.Africa, that's our platform. It's an Agritech platform that essentially just digitizes the entire agriculture value chain.
Fantastic.
All the way from the farmer to the aggregator to the processor.
At growth level, where are you at?
So our growth level, today we are working in 6 counties. Yes, working in 6 counties. We're already serving close to 20,000 farmers.
So break it down for me like I'm a 6-year-old. What does Ketha do?
So what Ketha do, number one, we digitize the agriculture value chain. Why do we do that? It's because we want to connect all the dots.
Okay, step back a bit.
Yes.
You know, as people in tech, we love these acronyms.
Yes.
Just break it down to my audience who are not techies. What do you mean by digitize the agriculture?
So when you think about it, every farmer, once they produce, they take that produce to somebody called a cooperative.
Correct.
So all farmers in Kenya, most of them are organized around the cooperative movement. We know that. So they take that produce and take it to a cooperative.
Yes.
The cooperative aggregates it. If it is milk, whatever, then the cooperative sells it to a processor. Sometimes the cooperative is also a processor. To some extent, they chill it, pasteurize it, then they sell it.
Especially in the
dairy sector, yes. If it comes to macadamia, they are called brokers. The guy who buys for the farmer and aggregates, then takes to the processor.
Macadamia has no cooperatives.
No, not really. They're mostly organized. Brokers buy from the farmers, mostly.
It's probably an opportunity for these cooperatives to extend.
Yes, and that's what actually the government is trying to do. Organize all these people into cooperatives so that they're able to benefit. So most value chains are organized like that. If it's potato, somebody will come and buy, aggregate, and then go.
So where does Ketha come?
So Ketha comes in, and first of all, you digitize the farmer. Where do your normal KYC? Plus, where do you live? You know, things like geolocation, acreage, what do you produce, and things like that. Basically, beyond your normal KYC. So back to financial services that you used to do in banking. Name, ID, email, done. So we're going beyond that. Where do you live? Geolocation, acreage, what are you producing? Because these things are important. Sometimes you can even look at the soil pH and all these are really important metrics.
You know why I love that? You know why I love this conversation? Yeah. Earlier today morning, I talked about the fact that we need to move beyond financial inclusion now. Because what is it that you're counting if people are not producing?
Absolutely.
When you start talking about economic inclusion.
Absolutely.
And that's the conversation you're having.
And that is why for us, that by digitizing that, I'm able to tell what you're producing vis-a-vis what you're being paid vis-a-vis your capacity.
Correct.
Where is the gap? Now, from there how do you take that produce now to the cooperative? That process in there, digitize that process. When you get to the cooperative, what's their biggest challenge? Banks don't touch those guys. Why? They can't understand what's happening in there.
There's no data.
So build some sort of a mini ERP for these guys so they're able to manage their stuff. And you'll realize once you do that, these guys are actually moving a lot of value. So create just a simple P&L, inflows, outflows. Some of them are actually selling milk through ATMs and to schools and all that. How do you help them? Digitize that. And then finally, they sell this to the processors. Some of this process also export. Like in macadamia, we've actually done this all the way to the export. I can actually tell you, macadamia came from this farm and it was exported all the way to the New York. I'd be able to trace that.
Oh, there is traceability.
Yes, absolutely. And this is important because think about it. Kenya signed an economic partnership agreement with the EU. And actually, I've just been invited to one of those conferences because the EU is hosting the president next month. And I've been invited to one of those conferences. And when you read that document, one of the things they're very clear about is the use of technology for traceability. Because there are certain standards that the international market is looking at. So how do you embed those standards on your platform? And that's what we're doing. Embedding those international standards on your platform so that what you're picking from the farmer is actually really what's needed for the market. That is why when you talk about digitization of the entire value chain, that's why it is important to us. I'm able to tell you all these things from one end to the other. And therefore, on top of that, now comes back my old knowledge. Payments now, learning and layering. Because please understand, we are not building a payments business. No, it's a platform business. Payments is an outcome. Lending is an outcome. And this is the difference between when we say people are building a payments business. What are you doing? What problem are you solving? So I'm solving the underlying problem. And by solving the underlying problem, then the opportunity for payments comes in, the opportunity for lending comes in, opportunity for insurance comes in. I will tell you, in the next 1 month, with a very large insurance underwriter that I won't mention, we'll launch the first micro insurance for women in tea sector in Kenya.
Oh,
Just by looking at that data that we have on the platform.
look, we are coming to the end of our conversation, and yet there's still so much absolutely scarce. I wish you all the best with Ketha. I wish you all the best with Ketha, and you and I, as colleagues at the Association of FinTechs in Kenya, we talk on almost a daily basis. So I'll be keeping tabs on what's going on with your permission. But I want to close this conversation today with why you joined us in the leadership and to found the Association of FinTechs in Kenya.
Yeah, interesting. So in the beginning of this conversation, I said every human has to have a purpose.
Correct.
So at the end of the day, being one of the pioneers in the fintech industry in Kenya, you have the benefits of seeing the challenges that are there, not only in Kenya, but in the continent. And I remember back in those days, every time, 2011, 2012, when we used to launch a mobile banking product, when you go to the central bank, they did not have a framework.
Correct.
We always say policy, tech precedes policy. So very quickly I asked myself, what contribution can I make with the knowledge that I have? Yeah, to help the industry get to where it needs to be in terms of, making sure that the right policies in place, making sure that we are compliant, because it's really important. It's really brought a lot of fintechs down, making sure that you're compliant. But most importantly, how do we then get these startups to get on their feet very quickly, to understand, what are the challenges and the pitfalls, because we went through all that ourselves. The other folks don't have to go through it. So how do we get them to get on their feet quickly? But most importantly, can we have a voice so that we are part of the conversation? And I think so far, since 2022, now we're in 2025, we've done a pretty good job. And we've had a brilliant, amazing conversations with the regulators, not only in Kenya, but globally. And for me, I think we are heading in the right direction. Like you said earlier today, 5 years ago, these conversations were not really happening. Right now, we are almost on a one-on-one with our regulator. They invite us for events. We invite them and they do show up. So I think it was the right decision. And all this is a labor of love. You don't get paid for it. You know that we don't get paid for this. It's your contribution back to society. And if by the time I step down as Secretary General, because I don't want to be Secretary General for life, you and I, but we need to give way to the next generation. I think by the time we call it a day, my prayer is that we'll have an association that has an audience, not only in Kenya, regionally and globally, but most importantly, an industry that is recognized, respected, and well valued in this country.
Fantastic. And I think that is one of the best ways to close this conversation. Guys, there you have it. Munyi Nthiga, my friend, my brother, my colleague at the Association of FinTechs in Kenya. And I look forward to our continuous conversation. Asante sana.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me here.
Cheers. So, how's the time? Okay.